Hi, today what you're going to be doing is filling in the part of your note taker that is on variables and the components of a graph. So first thing is we have different types of variables. The first type of variable is the dependent variable. It's also referred to as the responding variable. This is the factor whose values in different treatment conditions are going to be compared, and these are basically the data that is going to be collected by the scientist when they're doing their experiment. The dependent variables will be located or graphed on the y-axis because that's the actual data that you're going to be taking. So from group to group, when you're getting your data, it may differ. So that's why your graphs might look a little different from another group's graphs when we're doing the same type of lab. Now there's another type of variable, and that variable is referred to as the independent variable. The independent variable is also referred to as the manipulated variable, and this is the thing that the scientists are actively controlling. So these are all of the things that are being kept the same during the experiment. So when the groups have a certain condition that everybody has that same condition during the experiment, that's called the independent variable or the manipulated variable. That's what the scientist is actually controlling, whereas the dependent variable is the data that's they're going to be collecting. Now the independent variables are going to be located on the x-axis of the graph. That's the horizontal axis, and these variables will be the same for each group because when we're setting up the same type of experiment, those variables should be the same for every group. Now there are various elements to a graph. The elements to the graph are the following. You should be looking to label both of the axes, the x and the y axes, telling what is being recorded on that axis. Also, you should have the increments should be equally distributed amongst the axes, so therefore the data should have equal distribution of equal increments along both of the axes. You should plot the data in some way, depending on what kind of graph that you are producing, and you should have a title. Now there's various types of graphs that you would be producing, and these various types of graphs, in this case this is a line graph. This is where we are calculating or getting data on a continual basis. So here, this is what a complete graph should have. It has a title up at the very top. So right here we have the title. You'll notice that the units and what we're actually collecting data on are on, let's go back. Okay, so this is what a line graph would look like. It would have its title. It would have the units on both axes labeled. It would also have the increments on both axes, and these increments would be divided in equal increments, or equal units. So you'll notice down at the bottom it goes by 15s, and here on the y-axis it goes in increments of 110. So what this is doing is it's taking from time 0, week 0, and it's counting continually what's happening to the iTunes purchases. Okay. Since it's a continuation of the data, what we would use would be a line data. When you're comparing different groups and the results of different groups of individuals, then, like say we were taking the heights of boys in all 5 of my periods versus the heights of girls in all 5 of my periods. So what I would have down at the bottom here is I would have my period numbers, and then that would be on the x-axis because that would be something that would be constant. Then we'd have on the y-axis, this would be the height on the y-axis, and that would be what the data that we would be recording. So this would be our dependent variable, and this would be our independent variable. And we would use bars and probably color code them, one color for girls and one color for boys. So I'd have 2 bars for 0 hour, and I'd have 2 bars for first period, and 2 bars for second period, and 2 bars for third period, and 2 bars for my fourth period classes. And then I would show the average height of the individuals in that class. And that would be a bar graph. So when you're comparing groups of individuals, that would be, you would probably use a bar graph. Now the third type of graph is a pie graph. And a pie graph would be used mainly if you were to tell percentages of a whole. So if we were to take all of our bills and say our budget, and we were to divide it into percentage, what percentage of our income we spend on a certain item, that would probably be best represented in a pie graph. 3 types of graphs. We have the line graph, the bar graph, and the pie graph. So percentages would be based on a pie graph when you're doing comparisons of different individuals or different items. That would be a bar graph. And when you're collecting continual data on the same thing, continuous data over time, for example, that would be a line graph. So basically, I hope you were able to copy in your notes into your note taker on the various types of variables and the elements of a graph. And we'll talk about that tomorrow. In tomorrow's lesson, you will be working with graphing. Bye-bye.